I always had some respect for the electric train. It's not strange, it seems silly to many people. But because of my job I always had to take it very, very late at night, around 12 midnight. Reaching the last trip and the stations at that time take another shape. There are several that are completely deserted. It's a bit scary. Looking into the tunnels waiting for the next train and thinking that maybe something or someone is watching you from the darkness. It's scary, going down and downstairs moving away from the street, from the people, from civilization, like one of many particularly deep stations. There in fact I once had to see a girl. I was waiting near the last cars to board and she was waiting next to where would arrive first. She was standing facing me, her gaze was fixed in my direction. We were the only ones waiting and there was something about her that caused me quite noticeable discomfort. Of course I also asked myself what a girl who looked less than was doing. 10 years waiting alone there at that time, I don't know. But as soon as the train arrived, I got on without turning to see where she was, and as I moved forward I could only notice that she was no longer there. Maybe it was just my nerves. But seeing a girl alone, I don't know, a saleswoman who had gotten on the train and was just looking at me alert, also scared by the time and the situation. At least the latter is what I always wanted to think. After that, when they asked me if I had never seen a ghost, answered no, because he didn't consider it that way. However, that would change very shortly after, precisely in another electric train station. An uncle of mine worked for a long time in maintenance at several stations. He told me that the stories of suicides of people who jumped the tracks before the train passed were much more common than we know. For the electric train workers it is not at all strange, and they have become accustomed. They say that almost all of us as users have had some delay. Without knowing why do we get angry because the electric train does not move, and we will arrive minutes late to our destination, without knowing that a person perhaps decided to end his life. And now there are a dozen electric train workers waiting for the coroner, trying to prevent the news from reaching to the other users. Very recently, a matter of weeks ago, I had to work a few days in a building in the neighborhood very close to the station. I left after 12 midnight, but when I managed to finish my work a little earlier, I managed to take that last trip of the electric train to the outskirts with empty stores. 100 people taking drugs in the darkest tunnels makes it a gloomy place in itself, but the interior of its small station had never seemed particularly dark to me. I had about 2 weeks there, and after leaving my tasks ready, I realized that I could get on the electric train and avoid spending on a taxi. One day I saw the police officer at the entrance of the station, talking with a salesman seriously. I greeted him and got off the platforms under the direction sign of my destination. There were only 2 people waiting on the opposite side towards the west, but a minute later that train passed and I was completely alone. I was nervous. I began to feel an anxiety in my chest, a kind of unease that I cannot explain. A strange mix between an uncontrollable desire to vomit, chills, the desire to run away from the place, to be in my house, I don't know. In retrospect, I think it was my spirit, my body, my angel of the guard, some defense mechanism that told me that I shouldn't be there. Concentrated on what I was feeling. Suddenly I realized that something disgusting took over the place. While I was waiting and looking out for my train to arrive, a high-pitched cry, like as a girl, that echoed throughout the platform, made me turn towards the tunnel on the other side of the electric train. A girl perhaps. A small body was kneeling in the tunnel, almost in the dark, but close enough for me to see. I froze. I felt like my head was spinning, but this girl stood up, looking straight ahead towards the tracks, and I saw her clearly. And I even saw that she was Oriental. That was her features. That was actually that. This detail made me think for a moment that it was just a hallucination, something that perhaps happened to me from watching so many horror movies. But before I could process my thoughts, the girl began to walk on the tracks. I tried to run and I felt my legs bent. I began to see everything blurry. When the girl passed in front of me, she turned her gaze towards me and ran in my direction. She floated towards me with her arms trying to reach me. I got up and ran to the exit where the police officer and her friend approached me. Seeing me trying to help me, the only thing I could think about was that feeling of having her close, while I went up the stairs and felt almost like she could touch my back. Minutes later I came to my senses. I explained to them what that I saw. And to my surprise the police told me that I was not the first. That they had reported seeing the Korean woman, that's what he told me. And that it is assumed that at the beginning of 2016 a girl took her life and on a trip last year. Train of the day, a teenager of Korean descent. The large population of people of that origin who live in that area. If these types of things are handled very delicately. The girl's family made an effort to make this case even more private, but some workers know. Workers at that station say that they have heard her. And at least this police officer has already had to terrified passengers asking for help. I have seen her physically like that. As if she were a living person walking through. The policeman's friend, perhaps seeing me so broken, accompanied me to the taxi. I got sick and was in bed for a week. Today I no longer know how much of what I saw was real. I only know that no matter what that I spent. After 11:40 at night I will not take an electric train.